So, I'm going to be playing through the entirety of Cyberpunk with only this shovel. No grenades, no quick hacking, all damage I do to enemies must be done with this weapon. I don't know about you, but I didn't know this shovel even existed until about an hour ago, so this should be a lot of fun. Now to make my main character. He needs to be someone who had a reason to own a shovel, so only one of these life paths really fit that narrative, and I have to give him his looks and overall personality. He kinda looks like if Mr. In-Between had a sick beard. I'd like to go on record and say that I did look for a bigger, more majestic beard, but this was the best that they had. Oh, that's beautiful. Once a normal caretaker, his life took a turn after losing his parents during a mugging. No, wait, that's been done. After losing his parents during a carjacking. Wait, crap, that one's been done too. Okay, no more about parents. After losing his dog to a... freaking... Alright. Well, I give up. He delivers justice to Night City, one swing at a time. He is Daniel Spade, the Undertaker. We start off our journey already in trouble with the local wildlife, but I'm not held up long before I'm let off my chain and get to drive around in my very jerky and terrible car. Luckily for me, I stashed my shovel just over here, so let me go get that real fast. And there we go. After picking up the weapon we'll be using for the entire rest of the game, I head to the meeting place and meet up with Jackie before starting this smuggling mission. This is actually the first time I've ever done the Nomad path, so I wanted to experience it to the fullest, and I must say, it was actually pretty interesting. I do wish the introductions were a bit different and they didn't all end up with you meeting Jackie, but hey, what are you gonna do? But yeah, we get caught smuggling of course, and pretty much immediately are thrust into our first forced shooting section about 5 minutes into the game. For anyone that's unaware, these are sadly very common in this game, but believe it or not, I got through this without firing a single shot. There are a couple different types of forced shooting sections. First, you have the one that I'm about to go through, where you must go the entire length of the scripted event without your health reaching 0. Then we have the other type, where if you don't do whatever objective it is in time, you literally just fall over and die. This unfortunately is the most common type, and there's not a whole lot that you can do about it. But for the one that we're doing at least, we actually have some options. My first few attempts obviously ended in my death. You can't control the amount of times you're shot and take damage, as it's pretty much entirely random. And since we haven't been introduced to the actual mechanics of the game yet, this is also a section where you're unable to heal, and if I die, it's back to the previous checkpoint for me. So how on earth am I going to get past this roadblock without shooting and without dying? Well, we have only one option. I know it's not the most graceful solution, but it beats the alternative, which is actually failing the challenge within the first 10 minutes of trying it. And don't worry, as soon as I got through this section, I made sure to put it back to the hardest difficulty. And that was the big climax of the intro. I mean, unless you're like me and consider this iguana crawling up my arm another high point, which I personally think this guy would make a much better companion than Jackie. But I regretfully agreed to partner up with him, and we can finally start with the real beginning point of the game. The first major task is to take our trusty, well-used Caretaker Spade and go save Sandra Dorset. Jackie wants me to be quiet and all stealthy and stuff, but that's just not quite what we do around here. Of course, the huge pang of a shovel meeting skull makes quite the racket, so every single person in the whole area hears me instantly. My first impressions of the shovel? This thing is heavy. Only if I'm lucky enough to stagger them with the first or second swing do I think I could get a full 3 swings off. But fortunately enough for me, against most of these guys, that doesn't seem to be an issue. What is an issue though, is the fact that I take almost all of my health and damage before I can even reach the enemy to attempt to swing at them. So I don't think I need to tell you that I had my first actual death of the playthrough. Why did I sit there and look at it? Since Jackie is useless about 95% of the time, it's pretty much all up to me, but every time I even so much as poked my head out, they would laser me down to critical health. So my only option was to run out, smack one of them like twice, out-heal the damage, and then retreat to wait 2 more minutes for my healing items to recharge. It's by no means an exciting strategy, but it allowed me to survive just long enough to push the enemy back to this room and have more leeway to attack more often. Eventually, about 30 minutes later, I managed to take out the final enemy and progress the mission. This took quite a while, but it should get a lot more efficient once I level up and get some better gear. Or at least I sure hope so. One of my favorite things to do when doing these challenges is to make a build to help me get through it as best as I can. In this case, I really think for the most part that reflexes and body are going to be my best friends. I very much so had plenty of time to see what I'm lacking in that previous fight, so the first thing I plan on getting access to is dash. Having it will allow me to close the distance between enemies faster and allow me to get away from them and around natural cover more easily. Then from there, I can pretty much focus on damage and sustain, my next goal being to get adrenaline to let me get more hits before retreating. But in order to level up, we'll need XP, so I say see ya the heck later to Jackie, and go to run around and do some side content for a while. There are a ton of things to do in Night City, but for the most part, I just ran around doing police scans and taking out every enemy that I saw. Not only is it great for XP, but I also got a lot of practice with my new weapon of choice, and a boatload of money as well. It took a while to get used to, but the shovel has such a long wind-up time that I had to change my own mindset when it came to this game. I couldn't just run at the enemy and beat them like I usually do with pretty much every other weapon, so I found myself having to employ a much more passive approach majority of the time. Needless to say, the instant that I got all the XP I needed to unlock dash, it was pretty much all over. Having the ability to quickly retreat back to cover and not worry about having such a tight window of opportunity allowed me to do much more damage in a quicker amount of time, use less medkits, and die less often. Also, I just love getting the dash skill for the movement tech. Fast movement is the best feeling in the game. You cannot change my mind. Now content with my level and ability to actually inflict some damage to the enemy sometimes, it's time for the very first story rush of the game. There's a lot of content in this game that has no action in it whatsoever, so we're just gonna skip right on past all that. After what feels like 3 eternities to get back to any form of action, it's time for Jackie and I to pay a visit to our not-so-good friend Dum Dum and get the flathead. I'm sure there's a way to go about the dialogue here so I can use my shovel, but obviously I'll shoot him if I press to shoot him, and if I choose to do nothing, well, you're fucking dead! So I end up doing something I still regret to this day, and just pay him and leave. It sucks, but that's the only way I knew that I could get out of this without breaking any rules of the challenge or ending up flatlined. If you know of a way that I could have used whatever weapon I wanted, then feel free to let me know. I'll admit, I hadn't planned on doing nothing in that mission, so I'm missing a decent amount of XP at this point. You know the drill, it's back to grinding for me before taking on the next bit of main story. Not only do I feel better in terms of level, but we are also looking the part much more as well. But now it's time to meet up with Dex at the Afterlife again and move ahead with the story. The heist is going to be interesting to say the least with this challenge. Not only is our weapon choice super limited during it, but we're also put up against some seriously difficult enemies if you choose to not take the stealth approach. So we infiltrate, use the flathead, watch a Broadway musical with front row seats, and go skydiving before we're thrust straight into the action. Since I don't have any weapons to use during this mission, I'm pretty much entirely reliant on avoiding fights or have Jackie fight for me. It may seem like a dumb play, but the first thing I did was try to simply run through and avoid contact with every enemy. You would actually be surprised at how well this works sometimes. It didn't work the first time because these doors didn't open for whatever reason, but after trying again, I managed to get to this elevator and hide behind this tiny wall for cover. Somehow, the instant you get behind this wall and stay completely still, most enemies turn into stormtroopers from Star Wars and can't hit a single shot on you.
Man, these guys are elusive.
So this at the very least gives me a chance to not die. If they do somehow manage to stop in the precise spot that'll allow them to hit me, I simply switch walls to take cover again. This strategy was actually working, but the only way to make the elevator descend to the first floor was by taking out the Arasaka officer and taking his keycard. This meant that I had to rely on this thing to not die the instant he stood up after recovering and actually do some damage to the enemy. You see, Jackie is the worst partner ever on the hardest difficulty. He somehow managed to secure a spot ranking him lower than Donald and Goofy in Kingdom Hearts. But I had actually no other choice, other than to sit there and wait until Jackie at least took out the captain. After establishing that it would in fact be a viable strategy to sit and wait for him to do this, I decided to speed up the process by lowering the difficulty for my boy here since he really needed it. And it would have taken me about 5 hours to wait for it to happen naturally. But But in the end, he did actually take out the enemy and allow me to proceed to the next phase of the mission. Even though the enemies do an insane amount of damage if they hit me, with my dodge ability, I'm able to get through the danger zones quickly and get behind cover until finally getting to Delamain and getting out of there. But it's not mission accomplished just yet, since we're instantly thrown into another forced shooting section directly afterward. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, there are two types of these missions, and this one just so happens to be one where you instantly die if you don't complete the objective in time. So we are just gonna skip over it. Same with the Johnny Silverhand portions that follow throughout the rest of the game. They don't exactly give you a shovel alternative weapon that you can use. So I just blast away, enjoying playing normally for a few minutes before it's back to the grind. After literally being brought back to life after being shot in the brain, it's back to Night City to liberate people from this plane with my shovel. It's around this point that I visited a Ripperdoc to really start considering what I should strive for when it comes to cyberware. The only thing I could afford at this moment was the ability to double jump, but eventually when I gather enough money, I plan on going all in on armor, melee damage, melee attack speed, and maybe I could even spoil myself with the Berserk deck that will allow me to do much more damage while being immune to dying. It's like this thing was made for this challenge. Also, don't laugh at me, but it took around 7 hours into the game and this Cyber Psycho fight to remind me that I'm able to block with my shovel to do counterattacks. I'm not proud of this. Time for one of the worst scenes in the game, the unskippable dialogue with Takamura. Oh, is it finally over? I just went to go take a nap. Seriously, why did they make it so you can't skip this? It's like a 15-minute long dialogue. With that out of the way, we need to find Evelyn so she can help get the chip out of our brain. First, I ask Judy where we can find her, and make my way to Clouds. This place is going to be interesting, since under normal circumstances, they ask you to deposit your weapons in this box before they even allow you to enter. I think there's a way to bypass this, but you need to have a high technical level, which I don't have, so I'm gonna need to find a way to do this unarmed again. My first attempt, I deposited my weapons and then made a break straight for Woodman's office. Even with the entire facility shooting at me and being on the hardest difficulty, I managed to make it there in one piece after multiple close calls, because I finally unlocked the Adrenaline ability, which gives you an oversurge of health after every usage of your health item. But once I got there, since I had no shovel to kill Woodman, I had to rethink my strategy because he wasn't going down without a fight. It's with great sadness that I tell you I couldn't see another way past this section other than talking my way through it. So I leave, pick up my shovel again, cough up 2 lungs and a liver, and have a chat with Johnny about what to do next. Can we talk about how something like this is possible? Isn't Johnny a construct in our head that can't interact with the outside world? Are we telekinetic now? How did Johnny move that stool to sit there? Is that stool also a hallucination? These are the answers we really need. Anyway, our talk with Woodman led us directly to Fingers. I tried to hold myself back, I really did. I even let him finish working on his patient before talking to him. But, yeah. The doctor is out. After a bit more sleuthing around, we find Evelyn inside this building, and I have to fight my way down to get her out. Thanks to my many hours of grinding and all the upgrades I've gotten up to this point, I at the very least don't struggle against the small fry enemies too much. The only ones I seem to have some trouble with still are the ones with skulls above their heads. It's almost like they're meant to be more difficult or something. For the most part, my strategy consists of dashing towards them, smacking them as many times as I possibly can before my health dips to half, and I heal if I need to before retreating and waiting for my health kits to recharge. It's a simple strategy, but it worked for me and helped me get to Evelyn's room in the end. Thanks to the amount of loot I've picked up till this point in the game, I have accumulated quite the stack of money, so I think it's time to indulge myself and get something that at the time I had no idea would be as essential as it was to the challenge. Yay. This thing is gonna save me so many times later on. You have no idea. Its boost to attack speed and all that is great, but the main reason we want to get it is because of its ability to stop you from dying entirely for a limited amount of time. You'll see what I mean in a while, trust me. Now, since the game wants me to wait for Mr. Hands to call back, it's time to start up with Pan Am's missions by paying a visit to Rogue at the Afterlife. Did you know that no matter which dialogue you pick here, whether you decide to pay $15,000 or not, you'll be doing the same thing? Yeah, Yeah, that's a shame. But she tells me where to find Pan Am, and we set off on our absolutely fun-filled journey together, starting off with retrieving her car. There's not a whole lot different about this fight, other than the fact I now have the ground pound ability, which I pretty much solely use when there's multiple enemies in one spot that I can Hulk smash. This saves me a ton of time because every swing of my shovel takes approximately 3 minutes each to pull off. The hardest part of any of Pan Am's missions is if you agree to help her take on Nash, which I of course agreed to since I like to smack people. There's about 1,000 men in this tiny cave that you have to deal with, which means being caught out in the open for a second longer than necessary will likely result in your instant death. Added on top of that, snipers, quick hackers, and brutes, it's pretty much the ultimate wombo combo of all small fry enemies put together. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, we just picked up the Berserk cyberware, so thanks to this, we actually have a shot at survival here. If I was being smart and thinking ahead, which I wasn't, I would have popped Berserk and instantly went to take care of the quick hacker. The reason for this is because throughout the fight, if you sit and let him quick hack you, he'll eventually get to an imminent system collapse that'll instantly kill you. But the hacker is somewhere within this mosh pit of fellas, so I couldn't find him. As I'm cowering in fear until my health items recharge, I notice that the sniper is going to be a bit of a problem. So I climb these stairs and use them as an airstrip to take flight and get to the other side of the cave where the special enemies are. I take out the brute in a few hits, then the sniper and his spotter, all while avoiding the imminent system collapses and crippled movement. Somehow I managed to make it through this whole section without dying even once, so I'm gonna go ahead and call that a win in my book. I've now gone beyond my end of the deal with Pan Am, so it's time for her to help me with Hellman. We're just gonna skip right on by another forced shooting section where you just die if you don't complete the objective in time. Then we leave a crater in the earth for the sole purpose of knocking this airship out of the sky. Once it's down, it should be simple to get Hellman, right?
Nope.
Let me throw a bit more foreshadowing at you. These cyborg enemies are terrible. Who'd have thought that smacking metal with a shovel wouldn't be very effective? Definitely not me, I guess, although it really didn't help that I kept forgetting to turn off the cannons on top of this airship. With the help of invincibility thanks to Berserk, however, I was able to get through this mission without any more hiccups. I forced Pan Am to run the whole way since I can just dash, run, and move about as fast as a motorcycle, and jump right into business. It doesn't go so well the first couple times because there's a few snipers on top of the building that I neglected to take out, but once I actually learned from my mistakes, it was relatively simple. The enemies are really starting to become dangerous here at these later levels, but after what I can assume is a really wonky bike ride to the nearest hotel later, we interrogate Hellman and are able to move on once again. Maybe it's just from my bad experience with Takamura's 2-hour-long diner dialogue session, but I always dread the moments that I have to come and talk to him again. He and I go through a whole other loop of long, unskippable dialogue with Wakako to prepare us for the parade, and Mr. Hands returns my call mid-sentence with Takamura, so I decide to go do it instead. Takamura probably thinks I have some issues right about now. The whole thing with the animals is its own major hassle, and I have to jump through about 100 hoops before I'm able to continue. So I'll spare you the details and we'll just get right into the fighting. The only thing you need to know is I need to enter the mall that's infested with animal gang members to prove my worth before this guy will let me see his boss. So, of course, I go in swinging. Remember when I said the enemies with the skulls over their heads are the hardest to take out? Well, here, almost everyone has a skull over their heads. So this is going to be quite annoying, as I'm sure you're aware. My saving grace of this area was definitely the Berserk mode, as it'll pretty much continue to be for the rest of the entire game. If I didn't have it, I'd be forced to do actual combat with them, perfect blocks and all, and you know I don't have time for that. Honestly though, the Quake ability proved to be super handy as well, allowing me to get in and knock down groups of them at a time, kill one or two, and get out before they can even stand up. Let's just say your boy Daniel Spade is an absolute menace to Night City society right about now. I did die one time, but that was just because I went into this area and was blocked from exiting as soon as I stepped inside. We may have finally gotten to the van, but our mission isn't over yet because we have to fight Sasquatch. And let me tell you, she was much more of an issue for me. I think the fight actually wants you to take her hammer away from her, but every time I did that, she would beat me into the ground and pretty much instant kill me directly afterward. So then, when I decided not to pick up the hammer, she just casts it aside anyway. I died 3 times to this behemoth before finally standing a chance, but this turned out to be a really fun fight. It felt like a nice old-fashioned boss fight that I had to actually work really hard to overcome. overcome. The strategy I used primarily consisted of dashing away when she tried to attack, berserk bursting, and getting about 10 hits in, then going on the defensive once again, getting a single hit in every few seconds when I could manage it. If she hit me even one time, I would be brought down a whole third of my health, so I needed to be extremely careful. Let's just say she didn't react well to losing. No, actually, she started clipping through the ground and stuff. It wasn't pretty. Hey, there we go. Now we can continue with Takamura's mission. First off, we need to do a bit of scouting to infiltrate an Arasaka HQ to upload a virus or something before the parade starts. What you're supposed to do is sneak in and get everything done undetected, then leave before you're found out. But come on, you know how I do things around here by now. So again, I go in swinging. At this point in the game, we are absolutely stacked with body upgrades, including having a finisher that lets me pretty much instantly kill someone with my shovel if they're below 25% HP. Combining that with the defense break when I strong attack an enemy, I can take out a normal enemy pretty quickly, but there are a lot of enemies in this stronghold, including quick hackers, so I can't afford to let my guard down. Luckily, there is tons of cover for me once I actually get inside, so I use my dashes to quickly close the distance and get to the terminal I'm supposed to hack and avoid the gunfire of all other people in the area, using my berserk as a trump card if I found myself in a pickle. Honestly, the build is coming together quite nicely. Out of all the other challenges I've done for this game, this was by far the easiest time I've had in a while at this location. I even stayed behind and made sure to finish off the rest of the enemies until I had single-handedly taken control of this stronghold. Compared to that, honestly, the parade itself is a cakewalk. Even if you get spotted, if you're behind a wall, there's not a whole lot the AVs outside or the enemies can do about you. I move through with grace, taking out every sniper I encounter, until it's finally time for the fated Oda fight. First off, let me tell you I didn't die a single time during this fight. I kept my dignity all the way until the end and didn't even take one damage. Nope. I'm serious. The Oda fight is another one of those awesome boss fights in this game that you miss once it's gone, but honestly, it goes by pretty quickly. My method of fighting him here is to back away when he melees and strike first and hard when he retreats. If you're unfortunate enough to find yourself taking his long-range smart weapon attacks, you're probably gonna die or come pretty close at least. If you can manage to get a perfect block on him, you can do some serious damage, but other than that, there's not really a lot of times that you can hit him more than just once. He just moves too quickly in comparison to my one swing per minute attack speed, even with all the cyberware I've decked myself out with at this point in the game. Believe it or not, I actually used Berserk defensively more than offensively this time around, making sure he couldn't kill me when I was knocked prone for an attack. But in the end, I managed to deliver some perfect blocks that I'm sure even Oda was surprised to see, and finally took him out.
Sorry, Oda.
Turns out Takamura wasn't too thrilled that I killed Oda, so he decided in the moment to kidnap Hanako and bring her back to his evil sanctum.
I don't want to kidnap the governor!
I arrived there to talk to Hanako along with Takamura, but he told me to knock a certain amount of times, and I wasn't listening, so...
We're about to go live.
Hanako, Takamura, and I all talk while Johnny sits away in the back corner of a dark room like a creeper, but things aren't all peaceful for very long, since, you know, the entire city is looking for us right now and stuff. I'm then faced with the option of running and leaving Takamura to die, or go back and save him. While I don't really mind if Takamura dies or not in this playthrough, if I go back to save him, I'll get a lot more kills and money, so you know what I chose. I won't show too much from this section as it was incredibly dark and I couldn't see a single thing, but yeah. It's around that time of the game where I need to start thinking of what ending I want to go for. I want something cool and fits with the character I've created, but one that will also be difficult enough for the challenge. There is one ending that gives me precisely what I'm looking for, and it just so happens to be the hardest ending by a long shot. Of course, I'm talking about the infamous finale, Don't Fear the Reaper. This secret ending is by far the most brutal ending in the entire game. Unlike the other endings where you have allies backing you up as you raid Arasaka Tower, with this, you're completely alone. Not only that, but if you die, the game just straight up ends and you're sent to the main menu, even during the Atom Smasher fight. Now imagine doing all of that, but with only a shovel, and it starts to become pretty clear how terrible this is gonna be for me. Since this is a mission that is mostly focused on V's and Johnny's relationship, however, it means we're gonna have to complete a load of extra side missions and select specific dialogue choices to even allow the choice to pop up. I won't go too much into detail since this isn't a tutorial video, but here's loosely how it went. First, we give control of our body to Johnny so he can go personally talk to Rogue, but instead he goes and does some stupid stuff. Then we go try to find Smasher along with Rogue, who we believe is on this boat, but end up finding Johnny's gun and car instead, along with finding out where his body was buried all those years ago. V and Johnny have a heart-to-heart after Johnny comes to the realization that he's kind of been a bastard, and when it finally comes time to choose who to go into battle with later on the rooftop, after waiting a full 5 minutes, Johnny says this.
Kinda tough deciding which of your friends get to die, isn't it? Good news is you got this one chum who's already dead, and he'd be honored to join you on a wild run.
If I gotta die, rather fall into my grave, gun in hand and on fire, and not drag anyone down with me.
Huh. You just discovered what it takes to become a legend. Grab your iron. Let's mobilize.
Aw, hell yeah. So at this point, I'm pretty pumped up. It's just Johnny and I versus the world, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And I'm dead. Yeah, I saw that coming. Don't worry, we're not gonna end it there. We're gonna finish this even if it kills me. I load up a checkpoint and go back in, ready for round 2. Then 3. Then 4. The Don't Fear the Reaper ending sends every single elite level enemy they have at you back to back to back as you fight your way through the building until you eventually get down to Mikoshi. Our first objective is to swipe the captain's key card and take the elevator down a bunch of floors to the lower levels. If the enemies practically one-shotting me wasn't enough, the longer we take, the more our maximum health will drop since the chip is beginning to slowly kill us. The longer we take, the more difficult it'll be to complete the rest of the mission, including Atom Smasher's fight. I won't sugarcoat this for you guys. I died here a lot. Everything combined, it took me around 10 hours to complete this mission. Since this is around a level 45 mission, going in at level 26 was obviously not the best play. My being severely underleveled was the primary factor behind my getting instant killed. So for the first hour and a half, I fought relentlessly to simply get past the first wave of enemies, but to no avail, giving up after realizing how little damage I was doing to this mech. Yeah, I remember now. Metal against metal isn't exactly super effective. So I went back to grinding out levels and side missions for about 3.5 hours. A couple of days later, I came back 9 levels higher with a bunch of new cyberware ready to go for another try. It also didn't help my first attempt when I realized only 25 hours into the game that I'm actually able to level up my shovel, so yeah, don't laugh. As much as I'd like to go through every single death that I had here and analyze everything that happened, this video would be hours long if I did. So enjoy this cut of everything all put together into one.
Time to party like it's 2023. So far, so good.
Got it.
Hey, over here. Ain't no expert, but sure looks like the tower's mainframe to me.
I finally made it to Mikoshi, and the only thing left in our way was Atom Smasher himself. We're doing pretty well on time, ending up getting here at about the half health remaining mark. Smasher's fight is absolutely insane. With his Sandevistan, he'll close the distance on you almost immediately, and he has about 12 different fighting styles when it comes to ranged and close quarters combat. Without a doubt, if I didn't have my dash ability, I would have been destroyed multiple times in this fight. Same when it came to the Berserk Cyberware, which was now a Militech variant. With it, I could stay up close and personal with Smasher without having to worry about dying, and dish out as much damage as I possibly could on him. At around his halfway mark, he starts calling for backup, up, which divides my attention even further. Between them and Smasher's attacks, I hardly had any time to breathe, all the while my health was still ticking away. So I dedicated an entire berserk usage to just taking them out. There were a couple times where I got extremely lucky in this fight, but the end was finally in sight. He dances around way too much during the final stretch, but once he's in the middle, I'm home free to go berserk and take care of Smasher finally, once and for all. And that is pretty much it for this challenge. I let Johnny take my body in the end since V would just die anyway if we decided to keep it, so I'll let that continue in the background while I give the outro. The shovel only challenge was incredibly hard at times, but honestly it was one of the most fun challenges I've done for this game in a long time. It really enforced a slow and methodical approach when playing at times, but towards the end, since I went with mostly attack speed enhancing gear, things started to ramp up big time. Do I recommend doing this secret ending with only a shovel? Probably not, but hey, you can't say an Undertaker style character taking the Don't Fear the Reaper ending isn't pretty badass. This is by far my favorite ending out of all of them, and I'm super glad this was the one I chose for my second time ever beating the game in its entirety. Special thanks to all my subs and members, I appreciate you all. If you enjoyed this video, here's another one that you'll probably enjoy. Thanks for watching, everybody.